So good morning, everyone. Hard to believe that this is our final day of Beyond Big Data. This is a tricky process to try to get everyone together virtually. I just want to tell everyone we're recording this morning session and with the intent that people can participate and listen at their own pleasure, but also because it's important for us to archive. We've had incredible conversations over the last few days. So we hope that if you joined us, that you enjoy this. We've been trying to take as much deep dives across an array of topics that are really predicting the future, and we're pretty thrilled about that. We're going to kick the day off with our panel discussion with real versus hype, and data and artificial intelligence machine learning experts weigh in. And that's going to be followed by some really awesome breakout sessions across a lot of interesting people doing amazing work. And we're also going to have a technology showcase. And then finally, we're going to have our keynote, and that is Dr. Peter Angeline. He is the strategic futurist from the Hershey Company. And I actually said he's a strategic futurist for candy. That's sort of like a cool title, but I'm very excited because he has really deep expertise. And I'm really thrilled that he'll be joining us as well. So we appreciate everyone being with us. We appreciate our sponsors. And, thank you to the speakers of all week. And we are going to, in lieu of speaker gifts, we make a donation to the Greater Pittsburgh Food Bank. If you don't know that we are still in this region struggling in terms of people having access to enough food, the pandemic's been a year, and we're pretty passionate about making sure that people get what they need, and we're doing our job in making sure that while we're prosperous as business and innovators, that we're also making sure that we're not leaving people behind. So it's really important to us, and I know it's really important to all of you who have joined the call today. So if you want to contribute to them, in addition, feel free to do that, and we can put the link out there. So I want to thank our sponsors who have believed in us. That you've seen their logos all week. I just want to give some shout out because they help tech companies thrive. And the presenting sponsor is CGI, and keynote sponsor is Risk Focus Incorporated. Panel sponsors include Qlik and the Consulate General of Canada in New York and Pittsburgh, and supporting sponsors, Cloudera, DQE Communications, ACNC Jetstore, Plus Consulting, and Snowflake. Get to know them. They are part of our ecosystem here. So at 11 a.m. in the technology showcase, this will be your last chance to visit with our sponsors and learn about their products and services. There's still an opportunity to visit the virtual event bag. You will receive one final reminder tomorrow morning to check it out. Do that, because there's really a lot of great information inside these bags. So before we kick off the panel, I just want to announce we had a raffle, and I want to announce the winner of the raffle that all of you were able to enter when you registered for this week's event. And the winner is a $100 Amazon gift card, and it goes to Erica Machin from Carlow University. So I'm hoping Erica is here, and we will provide her with that gift card. So thanks, really appreciate that. So right now I'm going to jump in. I'm going to introduce our panel sponsor, Qlik. A little bit about Qlik. They help enterprises around the world move faster, work smarter, and lead the way forward with an end-to-end solution for getting the value out of data. And joining us today, all the way from the UK, is Stephen Pressland. And he is the Senior Product Manager for Augmented Analytics at Qlik. And he's going to be moderating today's panel discussion, which I mentioned earlier is real versus hype. Data and AI ML experts weigh in. And I am going to, Stephen, I will be looking at the chat, the questions, but we're going to save the questions. We're going to let you run, the panel, and we'll, maybe we'll have time to have some Q&A. So thank you, Stephen. Thanks for being with us. I think, what is it, 3 o'clock in the afternoon? Is it 3 o'clock in the afternoon?
It's only 1. We haven't changed our times yet.
Oh, that's right. That's right. That's right. So welcome, Stephen. It's all yours. I'm going to be here. I'll be on mute. And thanks, everyone.
Yeah, so thanks, Audrey. Great to be here, and great to be hosting this panel today. So let's get started and let's introduce the panelists who are going to talk through this very exciting topic today. So let's start with Tim. So please, introduce yourself, and if you could just tell us how your organization is using analytics and machine learning and get us started. Welcome, Tim.
Sure, certainly. Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity here to speak with all of you today. Tim Derrico, Vice President of Data Analytics for FedEx. As you can imagine, we've been leaning really heavily for many years into the AI ML space to think about how we optimize our network. And I say our network, well, FedEx comprises of 4 operating companies: freight, express, ground, logistics. We look to optimize the entirety of the network as well as those micro components. And so obviously with COVID and the pandemic, we've challenged our models in ways we never thought imaginable. And it's been an exciting journey thus far. And I look to get into that a little bit more for the conversation today. Thank you.
That's great. Thanks, Tim. So also joining us is Gretchen. Welcome, Gretchen.
Thank you very much. So I'm very excited to be here with you today. And I'm the SVP of Marketing for First Insight. And we're a cloud-based software as a service platform. We were founded here in Pittsburgh in 2007 by a proud Pitt grad, undergraduate and MBA, Greg Petro. And our headquarters is north of the city in Warrendale. We have teams in Europe and in India. And we actually use AI and predictive analytics every day to help our customers, primarily consumer products companies, retailers, and brands, test their new products and offerings with consumers before they go to market. So we test digitally online, gather first-party input data from consumers, and process that through our proprietary algorithm. And then within 24 to 48 hours, we provide predictive results on which of these offerings will be winners, which ones will be dogs, how much people are willing to pay, and which offerings are going to be most successful with which consumer segments. So to put that 24 to 48 hours in perspective, most retailers have historically done in-store testing to get this kind of information, and that takes 2 to 5 months. So it's quite a time savings. Our results have proven to be predictive across product categories, geographies, and over the time since we've been operating. We've grown steadily since launch and now have hundreds of customers, including some local companies. I'm proud to say and happy that we work with Dick's Sporting Goods and Rue 21 here in the Pittsburgh area, and Zippo Lighters up in Bradford, as well as Kohl's, Crate and Barrel in the home goods space, Marks and Spencer based in London, Crocs, a brand you've probably all heard of in the past year. So that's a bit of an intro on First Insight. Thanks again.
That's great. And Davor, welcome. Let's please introduce yourself. And
thank you, Stephen. It's a pleasure to be part of this illustrious panel. I really appreciate it. Excited to be part of it. My name is Davor Brkovich. I'm the CIO of Matthews International. It's a Pittsburgh-based publicly held company. It has several segments, kind of diverse business segments. The first one is, I think, the one we're most known for, which is memorialization. And that's the very cheerful, supply of the cemetery and funeral industry, so caskets and memorials, etc. And then we have another segment, SGK, which basically is a global packaging and brand experience company. So it does a lot of, let's say, digital work for packaging that then large branded companies utilize. We have industrial technology and environmental solutions business as well, and that does marking and coding products. It does warehouse automation and does combustion systems. And we also have the Saueressig Group, which basically services the printing industries with rollers and supplies to do printing. And where we are in terms of this topic is we're relatively early in our RPA journey. And I think that's what we can talk about a little later on as well, in a little more detail. So that's us. Thank you.
That's great. So next we've got Ujwal. Great to have you with us today.
Thanks, Stephen. Hey, all, Ujwal here. I head up the AI/ML Center of Excellence that is part of Ppg Digital Organization. Ppg is a well-known company here in Pittsburgh. The vision of this company is to protect and beautify the world. And we do it across various areas, starting from architectural business to aerospace and everything in between. You see our products being applied on various products, and we are trying to beautify and protect all of these things. Now, in Ppg, digital transformation has been identified as key organic growth pillar. And as part of our first mission, we have selected 5 key focus areas to transform that have tremendous potential to unlock the organic growth in the company. And to transform these focus areas, we are building products and leveraging them to do the digital transformation across all these focus areas. Now, when it comes to AI is underpinning every one of these products that are enabling us to transform these focus areas. Just to give you some examples. So customer experience is one of the focus area we have selected as part of our first mission, and our formulation processes. That is the second area, manufacturing processes and supply chain, and our color matching processes. These are the focus areas at this point. And we're trying to transform all of these things with digital technology. With AI is spearheading all of these things. Thank you.
That's great. And finally, we've got Ivan. So welcome, Ivan.
Thank you, Stephen. I'm Ivan Tucker. I'm the manager of the data science unit at the Naval Nuclear Laboratory, commonly referred to as NNL. NNL is a government-owned, contractor-operated organization. We're owned by the Department of Energy and operated by Fluor Marine Propulsion. We have nearly 8,000 employees across the globe, primarily located at a couple of facilities, one of which is in West Mifflin, Pennsylvania. We also have a number of employees in New York and Idaho. And then we have a presence at many of our shipyards and vendor facilities all around the world. NNL has cradle to grave responsibility for the nuclear propulsion systems used by the U.S. Navy. So all of our carriers and all of our submarines. So we do everything from new technology development. We follow the build process, operations, training of sailors, and ultimately disposal. So obviously we have a number of places throughout that life cycle that we're looking to implement artificial intelligence and machine learning technologies.
Thanks, Ivan. That's great. So welcome everybody, and let's get started. So there is so much hype and buzz regarding machine learning. It's growing all the time. I can imagine that it's quite intimidating for you to get started and really embark on that journey. So I want to understand how you've navigated this and what your approach has been, and perhaps some of the challenges with that starting off. So Ujwal, let's get started. I know this is an area that you were quite interested in terms of some of those challenges. You're on mute.
I was talking on mute. This is one of the common words that we've been using it for quite a long now. So anyway, so at this point, from my perspective, AI has been a reality, and we've been using it in our daily lives for sure, without knowing it most of the time. But when it comes to the organizational capabilities to leverage the AI/ML, end of the day, Steve, we gotta approach the AI/ML practice with the product mindset, because if you want to generate the value of this intelligence, then you gotta encapsulate this intelligence into a product and then see the fields that you are operating in as markets and generate the value off of it. If you bring that specific mindset, then it'll force you to identify the opportunities that are available in your areas of focus, right? So once you identify the opportunities, the first and foremost thing that you need to do is to understand which of these opportunities that are available in our company or can embrace the existing data situation and the technologies that we have available in the market, and which can't. So then at that point, you would have 2 types of uncertainty surrounded by those opportunities. One is technology related uncertainty, and second is business value related uncertainty. So once you classify it based on that uncertainty, move your opportunities that have high technology related uncertainty into research process and assign right resources and processes to unlock that uncertainty. So, and set up the right expectation to the people that have interest in generating the value from these opportunities. But for those that can embrace the data situation that your company is in and can also can leverage the algorithms and the technologies that we have in the market. And at that point, what you don't know is whether this will generate the value in your business, whether my end user use it or not. So that's when you leverage lean startup kind of methodologies to unlock that specific uncertainty. So end of the day, if you don't know how to classify your opportunity, it feels like it's a hype. But as long as you have a lens to classify your opportunities into these two buckets, then you know what's reality and what's hype. And then you will be able to uncover these two in a systematic way. That's my view on it.
Yeah, that's great. And Tim, I know that you talked about some of the interesting challenges within FedEx. It'd be great to get your view on sort of that complexity and the challenge. You're on mute, Tim.
Double muted. That won't be the last time, probably. First off, I agree with everything that Ujwal just said about identifying those opportunities. But so many times we've got business partners that have this idea, that want to get into AI, ML. And I say it's one of the sexiest things right now in IT, next to InfoSec and some other things. But nonetheless, we start asking the questions of simple questions. What happened yesterday and why did it occur? Those simple DI, descriptive diagnostic analytics, that if we aren't really mature and solid and understand that part of the business or the processes, it's hard to get into the level of maturity of predictive and prescriptive analytics. So, one of the things that we always focus on is making sure that we've got the right measures and metrics that tell the story of yesterday and today. This will also provide a foundation of understanding the data assets and the business processes and functions that we're trying to solve for. I mean, AI and ML is hard enough. If you're not able to tell that story of operations currently, it's hard to predict those operations for the future. The last thing I'll also say to this point here is I've seen so many times over and over that the want and desire to get into AI and ML oftentimes creates a over-engineered solution for a problem that may not be that complex, right? And you oftentimes spinning wheels on trying to solve this just because you want to use AI, ML when there's opportunities to solve those challenges in a more simplified and more performant means. And so I think going back to the point of identifying the opportunities, identifying the options to solve those opportunities, not always will AI, ML be that silver bullet.
That's great, and taking it to the other end, Ivan, with the the complexities of military and government. Again, be great to get your sort of view on how you manage that hype within your work.
Yeah, as you noted, military and government have their own restrictions and processes to work through. But also nuclear power is, an unforgiving technology. When things go wrong, they can go really wrong really fast. And so for us, it's really been about, proving that this works and that we can use these types of systems to improve our processes. Our program, we always put a lot of emphasis on careful reviews, maintaining a questioning attitude, making sure that everything is right before anything gets close to the fleet. And so using the data that we have and developing systems that can demonstrate the strength of these technologies and the capabilities in a safe way has been really important to us.
No, that's great to hear. And next, Davor, I was really interested when we were preparing for the panel around you talking about your journey using RPA and being very much at the beginning of this journey for ML engagement. And perhaps you can just tell us a little bit about sort of that journey and how you are sort of having to manage perhaps that hype of not jumping too deep into some of those technologies that people may expect you to.
Great. Yeah. So let me give you a little context in terms of how we evolved into even considering RPA, right? As you can tell, potentially from the diverse lines of business, Matthews has grown through acquisition, and we've actually been spending a lot of our effort the last several years on a back office systems consolidation with SAP. So we've recently finished up in the last year or so a global single instance rollout of SAP. And we were, looking to leverage that investment, right, in terms of efficiency. And we started a, global shared services function. And as part of that global shared services function, we were, the goal there is, process and consolidation and efficiencies and standardization. And we were looking for what options there are from a technology point of view to enable that goal. And, RPA was one thing that, was a very common, let's say, tool or arrow in the toolkit, in the quiver for efficiencies. And, where we were was having discussions about how we can leverage that kind of technology. And I'm happy to say where we were is because we were standing up a business function, there was a lot of appetite for RPA and a lot of interest, right, from the business. So what's encouraging, I think, about the way this was spawned in our organization, was that it was more of a pull. It wasn't a IT created a shiny object and now it's looking to, impose that on the business. This was something, hey, we really need this to achieve our goals. But we sat there and we didn't have, let's say, that competency. We have a lot of other competencies, but from a technology point of view, we didn't have that. So what we did is we partnered with expertise, folks that had expertise, both from a integration and developing those bots and processes, and brought a technology with them. So basically, we work with a partner to implement, but it was our job to come up with use cases, right? So what we have is a governance process to look at, hey, where are those places that have pain, that have a lot of manual intervention? And we would look to see what is the potential time or ROI savings and efficiency savings associated with that. So we review that on a regular basis. I mean, we've implemented, a handful of bots already, primarily in I would say not super sexy or exciting areas, but things that took a lot of manual work in the business, things like master data validation, timesheet reconciliation, intercompany reconciliation. So all of these, basically gave us hundreds of hours of efficiency. And we have a regular process by which to, review use cases and then go about implementing them. I think our at this point, we're developing some good critical mass, and we're starting to talk about to what extent we bring some of those capabilities in-house. A lot of my peers here on the panel have very mature organizations with a lot of capability, right? We're at the point where, we're still, using partnership to get those capabilities, and we're starting to look to ensure we have, critical mass, and that this technology is something that we feel great about and is going to give us, the outcomes that we want. And we're looking now to start pivoting some of those capabilities internally as well. So that's where we are.
Yeah, that's great. And as we pivot the conversation, I think the next interesting piece to look at is, how with everything you're doing and the processes you're going through, how the pandemic has accelerated or slowed that journey. And Gretchen, I wanted to start with you, particularly as someone who works with a broad range of customers. You must have seen a certain change in behavior. So it'd be good to understand your views on this.
Yeah. Thanks, Stephen. And we have absolutely seen an impact. So and overall, let me just cut to the punchline. It's been an acceleration, not a deceleration. And so we've seen, for example, there's a consulting firm called Calypso that's part of Rockwell International now. and they do an annual survey of CIOs in retail. And the results were just dramatic when you compare 2019 to 2020 results. So, 93% said that their need to accelerate their digital transformation increased because of the pandemic. 78% said that this has impacted the plans of product leaders, to actually embrace technology in new and different ways. And specifically when it comes to voice of the customer analytics, the space that we're in, the intent to invest in the next 2 years tripled. So, these folks are actually really making some pretty dramatic changes. As it relates to some of our reality, I want to share some insights that maybe ring true as you think about things from the perspective of a consumer, which we all are. How do products get to market, right? And how has the pandemic impacted that, and therefore, caused faster embracing of technology? So oftentimes when you're dealing with like that sport coat that Tim has on right now, a company is looking at a line of possibilities that they can add to their assortment, and they'll all gather in a conference room and they're touching and feeling and discussing. And okay, so could any of that happen during the pandemic? No. So, they've had to rely on different means. And oftentimes, honestly, it was being on a Zoom like this and holding stuff up because samples were being sent to one of the merchants, or the product manager's home, and they're trying to figure out how to make good product selection decisions. So, using a platform like a First Insight and some other similar tools to present a set of data about each product, and all look at a common kind of screen of information and use that to inform better decisions. That's the kind of thing that they've had to go to. Or think about it, you work for a shoe company and you're trying to sell into Nordstrom. And, normally you'd go and visit your buyer and, the touch and feel the shoes, right? So the same kind of thing, you had to create a digital showroom. And so, there were some very real impacts of the pandemic in, frankly, forcing many companies in our space to embrace technology in new ways to just be able to do the things, that they normally would do on a day in, day out basis.
That's great. And Tim, we don't necessarily know a huge amount about everybody's business on the panel, but FedEx is a fairly well-known brand and name, and if anything we've seen is we've been shipping a lot more packages in the pandemic. It'd be good to get your take on what that's meant for you and your business, and perhaps the strains on your practice.
Yeah, certainly. So thank you to everyone's behaviors and changing to be more e-commerce focused, because it has been an explosion for FedEx starting back in last March. When we think about has this sped up our AI ML practice and maturity? Absolutely, right? We think about the models that we have in place, and really let's back up a second. There is a seasonality to FedEx and in the shipping industry. So we think about the models we have in place in our peak season, which is usually that November, December, January timeframe. We saw that in March, April, May of last year. And so when we think about those models and the AI that we had that was in place to optimize our network, quickly did we recognize the fact that those models started to drift and they weren't performing the value that we had initially counted on them based off of the historical data and trends that these were trained on. Due in large part to how we thought about operationalizing these models and how we support them, we were very quickly able to pivot and bring in some of those models that we would typically use in that seasonality portion of that November, December, January timeframe, and implement them in a part of the season that you wouldn't normally do. And so it was a learning experience for us, and really kind of validated a lot of what we put into the hardening, the CI/CD processes, the supporting of these models was really put to the test this last year on quickly being able to retrain, redeploy, and bring back into our production of optimizing our network. And so, one of the things I'll comment to that is regardless of where you are in your journey, it's never too early to think about how you are going to operationalize your models. These are living, breathing applications, if you will, that require that care and nurturing. And to ensure that continued value that these solutions provide, you must think about how you enable the teams to quickly develop, iterate, and redeploy for that continued business value. Because as we've seen in this pandemic, it has caused many companies and industries to quickly have to pivot in strategies and way they're thinking of operations to handle the change that's taken place in our behaviors due to the pandemic.
That's great. And finally, Ivan, on this topic, it's a very different landscape. It'd be interesting to sort of get the feel of whether this has had an impact in terms of the way that you've, working on those much larger, perhaps more long-term projects, and how you've had to adapt.
Yeah, so, as Gretchen said, it was definitely an accelerant for us dealing with the pandemic. Most of our employees are used to working, in our facility on highly classified or sensitive data. And so when the pandemic started, we quickly shifted to a telework situation like, everyone else. And so we saw that really as an opportunity. So we used that to make training available to folks, whether it was, online internet-based training and just pointed them to the right locations, or, some internal things. We brought in a number of external experts for virtual sessions. And so they really got to hear from a number of people from all over the world and how, AI could be applied to different problems to, realize opportunities. And that really generated a lot of great ideas, for how they could use those techniques internally, once they were back in the office doing their work. And then we also used it to highlight some of our internal expertise. We had a number of our people involved in giving training sessions, or similar efforts where, like any big organization, sometimes it's difficult to know who to talk to. And so highlighting that has really helped out tremendously for us and really helped us generate a lot of enthusiasm for these techniques.
Yeah, no, that's great to hear the way in which that's changed the opportunity for you. So moving on, there's there are many commercialized technologies out there, and I'm sure large organizations such as yourself look to those where you can, and a huge market and ecosystem of open source technologies that's often sit underneath these. Be good to understand, from you, where you've seen the different approaches to technologies of do everything yourself with, versus bring in partnerships and bring in commercialized technologies to find that right balance in your organizations. So Davor, starting with you, you talked about partnerships earlier. Perhaps you can talk about how technology selection has played its part.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, we've had different approaches to selecting technologies in the past, depending on where they are in the stack at Matthews. And we do have some, open source in the monitoring area, et cetera, where we have internal expertise and the ability to leverage that and feel comfortable using that. I would say specifically on RPA, our initial challenge was, well, there's more than one way to skin a cat, and we still actually think about that in terms of where is the correct use case for RPA versus other options. Like SAP could do some automation. There could be some automation going on in the middleware, right, layer as well. But we wanted to ensure that since we really didn't have strong expertise in-house in the whole RPA area, that we went with a very experienced partner that leveraged a very market-leading RPA software package, right? So in this case, we look to see what tools are out there. And in this case, since we wanted to leverage expertise and wanted to ensure that something was proven in this area, we went with a upper right-hand quadrant leader from automation software perspective as well. So we basically erred toward the market leadership, kind of established non-open source path to do what we're doing currently.
So that's great, and kind of a slightly different spin on the question, Gretchen. As a partner to organizations solving these problems, I mean, the use of commercial technologies and the expertise that comes with those, perhaps you can talk about how that's accelerating, perhaps giving a different approach to some of the organizations you work with compared to going it alone.
Yes. So as is often the case, 1 + 1 = 3, and connecting the dots can really bring a lot of power. And so, one of the things that we see is that there's a lot of value in integrating across not even just the supply chain, but all the way through the supply and demand chain. And so, we are regularly asked to integrate with the PLM company that a retailer is using, so product lifecycle management, and also the 3D design. And so if you think about that for a minute, it then becomes possible to design a product in 3D, not even make a physical sample, right? Design it in 3D, then you've got 3D prototypes. You can do the testing through a platform like a First Insight, and then run all of that through their product lifecycle management as the sort of system of record and the engine keeping it going, and just really become an awful lot more efficient, also from a sustainability perspective, because anytime you can avoid making physical samples of products in retail, you are so much further ahead, because so much of that stuff ends up in landfills, I hate to say. And so that's one of the real benefits and powers for unleashing both efficiency and better sustainability to really make these things happen more efficiently overall.
Yeah, that's great. And so just finally on this topic before we move on and get some input from Ujwal, I just wanted to get a quick comment from Tim in terms of the acceleration and the work that you've been doing, how much perhaps the commercial partnerships with organizations or technology you're building in-house has shifted that.
Yeah, certainly. So a couple of things here. First, when we think about the technologies and partners, we focused on developing a platform that would enable analytic development by a couple of different personas. You got your power users, your citizen scientists, and then your data scientists, right? At the core of the platform is where we made some big bets that will be able to complement our journey now and into the future. On top of that platform is where we introduced technologies and partners that aligns to those personas to enable and accelerate value delivery, right? And not only is the choice and decision of those technologies that can empower those various personas important, but then the learning and development that takes place to those personas within your company to learn and understand those technologies, but also provide them a path of their own data literacy maturity so that they can move throughout the platform into various groups and partners and technologies as their own experience and knowledge matures and expands. And you said it really well. I think the beginning of the question is there's a balance, right? There's tools and technologies, as I mentioned, that can certainly help accelerate that journey and that value delivery. And then there's other things where you say, what? It doesn't make a lot of sense for us to invest in this bucket. We probably can do this in-house because it's very unique to our organization or the problem we're trying to solve for. So, the way I look at it is ensure that the partners and the technologies you select will not only meet your needs now, that they too have a shared vision and strategy that you can lean into. As you mature, they will mature with you. And again, think about really the personas that will be leveraging and using these technologies and the value that you're trying to deliver by leaning into these partnerships.
Yeah, no, that's great to hear. And yes, similar to this topic as well, but perhaps a slight shift around how you're using partnerships to expand the capabilities and to understand how you can accelerate what you're doing and go on that journey.
Yeah, Tim and Gretchen covered most of it. I got to repeat some of those things because first of all, you got to know what business you're in. That's the first question you need to ask yourself before you develop anything. Obviously, you would have to build models that are very unique to your business, as Tim said. For example, in PPG, if you were to develop a product that's gonna transform our formulation processes, then you wouldn't find a lot of commercial technologies that allow us to do such things. That's when we rely on in-house development processes. But when it comes to inventory kind of challenges, that problem has already been solved in the market, and that's not the one that we would go after and develop the solutions to solve. But again, end of the day, then there will other dimension come into the picture, which is cost, right? So, and you got to think of some of those things, and then you finally make that decision. And we have great architects in place today, and they are building an architecture that will allow us to create an ecosystem of both in-house and external partnership work together and solve the problems that we have in place. That's how we are approaching it. And definitely, as Tim said, we do have strategic partners in place, and we ask from our side to them and their side to us is to have shared consciousness in this journey.
Yeah, that's great. And Ivan, talking of the partnership question further, and talk about how partnerships, both in terms of how you feel as a partner, but also how you use partnerships, to expand on how that impacts you.
Yeah, sure. It's a lot like others have said. There are some very powerful open source tools out there. We've used some of those to develop our own in-house solutions. We have some image processing tools that are based on open source, and also some natural language processing tools that are heavily based on some open source technologies. But partnerships have been key for us. We've been working with Naval for a number of years now, and really collaborating with them as peers. They have a lot of similarities to the work they do. We both support the Navy, so that's been great. And then also other DOE laboratories. We've been working with them and in discussions with them about some natural language processing applications that are common to everyone. And so, we use partnerships across the government, and then also with some commercial partners to really strengthen things and augment our in-house development capabilities.
That's brilliant to hear. And so moving on to the final question as we come towards the end of the session, and it's great. I was just looking in the question panel, and it's very similar thread of question has been raised there, and really around the issues that come up around this with relates to ethics and to bias that can be introduced with the use of models and automation, and Ujwal, coming back to you, around just understanding where you've seen that and potentially what lessons you've learned about how to deal with with those kind of quite wide impacting issues.
Sure, Stephen. First of all, I got to tell you, PPG in general is a very inclusive company, and there is no place for bias and unethical practices here. And every practice in this company has to adhere to that concept. So we are not different in this case, and we are also making sure that in the model design itself, these two items are being considered, because one way you can do the challenge here is most often than not, these models predict some things, and to understand why exactly they predict the way they did is the challenge. And now in the advancements have happened in the technology, with those advancements, we are now able to understand why model has predicted this individual prediction. One mandate, at least one key requisite that I have asked teams to focus on every time you develop a model, please ensure to have explainers for your individual predictions as part of your model design. it's not an afterthought. It should be included in the design process itself. That's how we are handling this situation. At this point in our journey, we are not facing many of such situations yet, but it is considered and being included in the design process itself. So those explainers should be able to help us whether the bias and ethics are influencing these predictions or not, and we should be able to spot them early in the journey and exclude them later.
Yeah, no, that's great. And Gretchen, as a supplier of technology which is using models where there becomes that extra level of of concern to make sure that's handling it. It'd be great to sort of get your feel on how that is impacting perhaps the solutions you're offering, where it's very much about understanding cultural bias within the buying practices, but at the same time not being discriminatory in that modeling process.
Right. So two parts to my answer here. Number one, particularly when things started coming out like GDPR in Europe, you're nodding your heads. So we were so glad that we've been SOC 2 compliant from the start, that we do gather information from consumers, but do it in such a way that we do not gather any personally identifiable information. And so bearing those things in mind as the world changes toward more focus on data privacy, I think is really important. And that's something that I'd like to point out to everybody on the call today. Don't dismiss that as unimportant, because it could come back to bite you. And we were glad that we had set things up appropriately from the beginning. Then, it is interesting, one of the applications of our, AI is in fact to help companies to identify products that could be offensive to some of their consumers. And so we're leveraging actually NLP technology plus our usual, Bayesian modeling based, AI based algorithms to go into what comments consumers are making about products, and marry that up with their sentiment data of, do I love it or hate it? And if there's enough convergence of, specific concerning comments and poor perception of the product, we're able to say, what, this is one that gets a red flag alert. And then they look in and they say, oh, well, people think that pattern on the fabric looks like swastikas or something. And clearly we don't want to launch that. Or some of you may remember the Macy's mom jeans fat shaming plates that they launched. In today's world, those things go viral, in a matter of hours. And you can destroy brand equity in seconds that you've built up over years and years. So, that's the kind of thing that we're seeing many of our customers finding very helpful and interesting from the point of view of leveraging AI and data to help them avoid those kinds of missteps.
That's great. So we've come to the end of the time now on the panel, and it's absolutely great to have had all of your input and some really insightful there that I know that the audience will have been able to take on board as they go on their journeys through this topic. So Audrey, I know that there's some questions that have been coming through.
No, absolutely. There are some questions. I don't know if you were able to see them, but there's one from Jack from Neural Studio. And he's talking about if there's too much emphasis on explaining up front, does that not in and of itself have potential to introduce its own set of biases, the self-fulfilling prophecies? I mean, this is a fascinating piece of all of your work. Anyone want to sort of grab that? I mean, there is bias inside of bias and some of the, in some of the processes. Anyone want to talk about that? It's a hard one.
Yeah, I was just thinking how to approach it, because it's a very sensitive topic too. Yeah. So in general, nobody want to practice these kind of things consciously, and and you want to put the checks and balances as much as possible, and everybody in the practice is trying to leverage all of the solutions that are available to address this topic, and one of that is this. And if that is going to introduce new issue, yes, we would have to step back and see how we should resolve this thing. At this point, there is no magic or silver bullet that's going to kill this thing in one chat. And we all have to strive to put multiple checks and balances across various stages of the model lifecycle. It may occur later or earlier during the process. How do we detect it if we missed in one stage and correct it immediately is what we can do at this point, is how I would answer that question.
Yeah, I mean, you know, this is really what has been exacerbated during COVID, and what we've seen in terms of the issues that have occurred since the murder of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, and the conversations around what is diversity. And this is really probably the essence of the importance of having, you know, diverse people that are looking at the issues, just like Gretchen was talking about in terms of fabric and things like that, where if you're not in a diverse group, you might not even see that. You might not be even just aware of that. So it's a good question, Jack. I mean, it's probably one we can go down, you know, a long slope on. I don't know if anyone else wants to react to that.
Audrey, I will say, I'll piggyback off that a little bit. And you're absolutely right here with the diversity. When we think about our data science teams and we look at their background, they didn't all have majors in data science and machine learning, right? We have English majors. We have those that were in arts, right? And when we look at a new challenge or problem, we often team them up and have 2 or 3 groups looking to solve this challenge. And you'll be amazed on the different approaches that they take to solve it because of the diversity of thought and their own backgrounds, right? At the end of the day, the data is the data, and what is the best model that we need to move forward with, we'll come to that decision, but at least we're starting out with a diverse group, and that's part of our recruiting, that's part of our training out front at FedEx. And then we look to have a kind of a multiple approach, not just one person leading it, because you will then introduce that bias right off the gates.
Right.
So when we go through that development life cycle and the iteration of model development, it starts right from the foundation of diversity, spread that problem across multiple people, and let's jointly come together to see what was the best approach that this diverse group came to the conclusion on.
Yeah. Anyone else want to join in on that? Okay, so, you know, the other piece that I'm not sure if we covered, but maybe we can grab is about the, you know, government regs. You know, obviously we've moved really fast. I mean, there's just no way that government has been able, just by the nature of the beast, not even polarizing our views, right? The nature of the beast, the industry does face challenges now in terms of collection of data, use of data, and not just the biases, et cetera. So where are all of you in that space? Are you active in terms of understanding, you know, what are some of the challenges and involved in public policy strategies, or is there a way that this really affects your work and you're hoping for some change? People are collecting data on everything. I mean, you know, from just even doing a video that you don't even know about, that someone's done a video of you on their phone, right? Any comments? Again, these are tough. These are great questions and points, and these are tough, and it's not meant to put any of you on the spot. It's really meant to, you know, try to think about, and even at the Tech Council, try to think about what are the policies we should be prioritizing in terms of, you know, moving forward in terms of these technology advances that are happening so fast that there's no way our government is in cadence with our timing.
Yeah, I will I'll kind of maybe kick this off. You know, Gretchen mentioned GDPR. I personally think it's a great thing, right? I mean, empowering our community, our society to understand the data that's being collected and how it's being used is something that, you know, obviously the EU led the way on. And we're seeing that now with the California Privacy Act in Canada, and we're seeing across many states starting to create and enforce a variety of new policies and regulations. It will continue to mature, and that's for the betterment of, like I said, our global society. So with that, one has to consider upfront the InfoSec data privacy classification of our data assets, which are, I believe, for every company, it's the most important, powerful asset we have, and how we protect that and safeguard it to not only protect our brand, but protect our customers, and going back to just, protecting the community and society for which we work within. Like I said, GDPR, I think, is just the start. I think it's a great thing. I think we're going to see more of that in the U.S. and across the globe, especially when we think about it in China and Australia too. There's other things that are taking place there. So don't dismiss that or think about it as an afterthought. And again, one of the things I talked about is, think about the operationalization of the models, but more importantly, think about how you're going to protect, document, capture, classify that data, and ensure that it's being used for the right purposes and means to accelerate that value for your company.
Well, Europe has been way ahead of us. I mean, you're talking decades in terms of their focus on data privacy, right? And, so for us to even try to copy some of the learnings from there is something that I think we need to do. The question is, how did that translate into public policy and, strategy?
If I may, maybe to add a little bit of a different twist on that, that's on the one side, and I completely agree with Tim's comments. And I think we're coming up on the 2-year anniversary of GDPR implementation, the end of May. So, it's a thing, and it is going to be expanding, and it brings a lot of important protection. The challenge on another face of that coin is that the consumer is now changing so quickly, and predicting how consumer preferences are going to be coming out of this pandemic. Even just think about how we dress for work, and will people now want to get dressed up if and when they go back into the workplace, or is everybody just going to keep working from home and keep wearing sweatpants? And so trying to somehow stay out ahead of that and understand and find appropriate ways to gather that consumer input to understand it, without, to Tim's point, violating the privacy. That's the very interesting challenge, and that sweet spot that many of us are trying to navigate.
Yeah, I mean, it's rich in terms of the opportunities there. I'm going to be a mullet dresser. So just for the record, meaning professional on top, and no one will know whether I'm wearing my pajamas on bottom. I think that's where I'm headed, right? And I accidentally did that and went to the office one day. So, it's hard to change. It's hard to change. It's been a long year. So we are coming up on 10 o'clock, and I know we can talk about this longer. I'm personally very interested in all the topics. I want to thank Stephen. Stephen, thank you for joining and moderating and really bringing some depth to the conversation during a limited period of time that we have. You were awesome. Can't thank you and Qlik enough. And Tim and Gretchen and Ujwal and Davor, just amazing for you to join with us and just to get a peek, a little bit of a peek on the inside in terms of, what's happening in your world. It really matters to all of us. So thank you for that. And I want everyone to just stay tuned here really quick. I just want to give you some announcements. Just go to the Schedge platform and select your breakout session. And so at 10 a.m. there's going, you can select from, there's so many. I don't even know which one I'm going to go in. You have ML Ops, moving AI ML to production from Google, science-based approaches to support explainable and trustworthy AI from NETL. How do you grow AI from the Army AI Task Force? At 10:30, you have a chance to talk about big climate data. That's something that we're really very interested in terms of how we translate that. This is about enabling 20 years of rainfall measurements. And that's from Civic Mapper, a woman-run startup here in Pittsburgh, and a machine learning approach to engineering from SAE and Cognistics. They've been doing incredible work in AI, and making bots smarter from SDLC Partners. So you can choose from there. And then at noon, we will be featuring, we have a closeout keynote that we're actually going to be doing with our daily BAU. And I love this. It's Dr. Peter Angeline. He's a strategic futurist from the Hershey Company. So what a job, like, you know, to the future of candy. I'd love to have a title like that. And he's going to discuss how the company, founded 100 years ago, is using AI to improve products and better serve its customers. I'm sure all of you, Gretchen, you might be really interested in just hearing, right, in terms of that space, and the rest of you. Personally, Hershey has a big footprint to changing a lot of lives as well. I don't know if you know any of that stories, but it's really interesting. So I think that's it. So, come at noon, go to the breakout sessions, return to the Schedule platform. And I just am giving like a round of applause for these amazing people who have joined us today. So much to extract and not enough time. And I know for those of us who have a little bit of Zoom fatigue, don't go away, join us. We're still trying to be connected. And thank you to all of our sponsors. And boom, thanks, Steve, for joining us from over the pond. So we're going to go in. So I'm ending this now. I'm going to go into a breakout. Thank you all. It's been an amazing 4 days, and I wish we were all in person, but that's not possible. So thanks, everyone. I think.
Thank you.
That's it.
Thank you, PTC.
Thanks, everyone.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
See ya.
See ya. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Okay. Let me see. I just stay on until everyone exits.